The billionaire stopped walking so suddenly that the crowd behind her nearly collided into one another. Her 8-year-old daughter, who had refused to speak to strangers since surviving a devastating tragedy 3 years earlier, quietly stepped away from her side, walked straight toward an ordinary single father volunteering at a community charity fair, and whispered something that instantly drained the color from his face. His hands began to tremble. His eyes filled with tears he had spent years fighting back. In that single moment beneath the bright afternoon sun, a forgotten promise from his past came rushing back, and a secret buried inside the heart of a former Navy SEAL changed the lives of everyone standing there. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share this story with someone who may need encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of support helps our family and our community continue sharing stories that remind us compassion is stronger than despair. The billionaire was named Victoria Ashcroft, a respected business leader whose renewable energy company employed thousands across Europe and North America. Newspapers admired her intelligence, investors praised her determination, and business conferences invited her to speak about leadership and resilience. Yet none of those accomplishments eased the quiet loneliness waiting for her every afternoon after work. 3 years earlier, a highway accident had taken the life of her husband, leaving Victoria to raise their daughter, Celeste, alone. Although Celeste survived physically, the emotional wounds ran much deeper. The cheerful little girl who once loved singing, drawing colorful pictures, and making friends at every playground slowly withdrew into herself. She rarely trusted strangers and often communicated only through short whispers to her mother. Victoria spent fortunes searching for the finest therapists, counselors, and specialists. Every expert tried sincerely to help, and some made gentle progress, but the frightened little girl's heart remained guarded. Victoria blamed herself more than anyone realized. She often wondered whether she had buried herself too deeply in work after becoming a widow instead of simply sitting beside her daughter through the pain. Success filled newspapers. Regret filled her evenings. Across the city lived a man named Nolan Mercer. Most neighbors knew him as the cheerful single father who coached youth sports and volunteered at community events. Few knew he had once served as a Navy SEAL. Even fewer understood why he never spoke about those years. During one humanitarian rescue mission, Nolan had lost teammates while protecting civilians trapped after a powerful earthquake. The memories remained vivid, but he refused to allow tragedy to define his future. After leaving military service, he married his childhood sweetheart and believed life had finally become peaceful. Then illness unexpectedly claimed his wife, leaving him alone to raise their 6-year-old son, Graham. Rather than surrendering to grief, Nolan chose service once again. Every free afternoon, he volunteered wherever families needed encouragement. Sometimes he repaired playground equipment. Sometimes he organized charity picnics. Sometimes he simply listened to lonely elderly neighbors. His son grew up watching acts of kindness become ordinary parts of daily life instead of rare occasions. One bright Saturday afternoon, Victoria agreed to attend a large community family festival sponsored by her foundation. She hoped the sunshine, music, and cheerful atmosphere might help Celeste smile again. The park overflowed with children chasing bubbles, artists painting colorful murals, musicians performing cheerful acoustic songs, and volunteers offering games that celebrated teamwork instead of competition. Nolan supervised a small activity teaching children how to build simple bridges from wooden blocks and rope. The exercise had nothing to do with military training and everything to do with trust. He believed every strong bridge began with patience rather than force. Celeste wandered quietly through the festival holding her mother's hand until she noticed Nolan helping 2 nervous children finish their tiny bridge after it collapsed several times. He never criticized them. He simply smiled, adjusted one piece at a time, and reminded them through gentle encouragement that every failure taught something valuable. Something inside Celeste changed. Without explaining why, she released Victoria's hand. Victoria looked down just in time to see her daughter walking toward the volunteer. She prepared to apologize, expecting Celeste to become frightened and return immediately. Instead, the little girl stopped beside Nolan and whispered just loudly enough for him to hear. She softly said that her father used to build bridges exactly the same way. Nolan froze. Not because of the words themselves. Because those exact words had once been spoken by another man. Years earlier, during the devastating earthquake rescue mission, Nolan had worked beside an engineer named Gregory Ashcroft. Gregory constantly encouraged frightened children by building tiny bridges from broken sticks while rescue crews searched for survivors. Whenever children became discouraged, Gregory smiled and reminded them that every bridge begins with one strong piece. Gregory had later shown Nolan photographs of his wife Victoria and their newborn daughter, proudly explaining they were the reason he always came home. Nolan remembered every detail. He also remembered something Victoria never knew. Gregory had saved Nolan's life during that mission. As Victoria approached, Nolan immediately recognized her from those old photographs, though time and grief had changed them both. She looked at him with polite confusion. Nolan carefully introduced himself and gently explained where he had known Gregory. Victoria stood speechless. Her husband had rarely spoken about the humanitarian mission because he believed courage belonged to entire teams rather than individuals. Nolan quietly reached into his backpack and removed a carefully protected photograph. The picture showed Gregory standing beside rescue workers beneath bright daylight, smiling with dusty clothes, tired eyes, and unmistakable hope. Victoria had never seen it before. Her hands trembled as she held the photograph. For the first time since losing her husband, she discovered a chapter of his life that had remained completely unknown. Over the following weeks, Nolan visited the Ashcroft estate at Celeste's request. There were no formal therapy sessions, no complicated treatment plans, and no pressure. Instead, sunny afternoons became filled with simple activities. Nolan and Graham built birdhouses. Celeste painted them with bright colors. Victoria occasionally joined, though she mostly watched quietly from a nearby garden bench. The biggest change happened because Nolan never treated Celeste like someone who needed fixing. He treated her like a little girl whose courage had simply become exhausted. Whenever she grew silent, he sat comfortably without demanding conversation. Whenever she smiled, he celebrated gently instead of dramatically. Whenever she remembered her father, he listened. That quiet respect slowly rebuilt her confidence. Victoria also found herself changing. For years she believed providing every possible opportunity proved she was a good mother. Watching Nolan reminded her that children often needed presence more than perfection. She began leaving the office earlier. Board meetings became shorter. Weekend schedules disappeared entirely. She started planting flowers beside Celeste instead of answering business calls. The garden gradually became their favorite place. One afternoon, Celeste asked Victoria whether flowers missed the people who planted them. The question nearly broke her heart. Instead of hiding her tears, Victoria admitted she missed Gregory every single day. Mother and daughter cried together beneath the warm afternoon sky. It became the first honest conversation they had shared about their loss. Nolan quietly gave them space. Months passed. The friendship between both families deepened naturally. Graham and Celeste became inseparable companions who built forts, painted murals, rescued injured birds, and organized tiny neighborhood kindness projects. They left encouraging notes inside library books, planted trees with volunteers, and collected food for struggling families. Watching the children reminded Victoria and Nolan that healing rarely happened through dramatic moments. It happened through ordinary afternoons repeated with extraordinary consistency. Then came another unexpected discovery. While sorting through Gregory's old belongings together, Victoria found a sealed envelope addressed only with Nolan's name. Inside rested a handwritten letter Gregory had never managed to deliver. He explained that if anything ever happened to him, he hoped Nolan would continue living without guilt because saving each other's lives had simply been part of serving together. Gregory wrote that courage meant returning home determined to build peaceful lives worthy of every sacrifice made along the way. Nolan silently read the letter twice. For years he had secretly blamed himself for surviving when others had not. Gregory's words finally released a burden he had carried alone. He folded the letter carefully and thanked Victoria with tears in his eyes. She realized her husband had unknowingly continued changing lives even after his passing. The following spring, Victoria announced the creation of the Gregory Ashcroft Family Resilience Center, a place where widowed parents, grieving children, veterans, and struggling families could receive support together instead of separately. She insisted Nolan become the program director. At first he refused. He believed others deserved the role more. Victoria gently reminded him that leadership was not about titles. It was about trust. He finally accepted. The center quickly became known for one simple philosophy. No one heals alone. Parents learned to share their struggles honestly. Children laughed without feeling guilty. Veterans discovered purpose through mentoring young people. Families who believed their future had ended slowly found reasons to dream again. Near the entrance stood a small wooden bridge built by Gregory during one of his earliest engineering projects and lovingly restored by Nolan. Thousands crossed it every year. Most never realized it represented far more than architecture. It represented every invisible bridge built between broken hearts willing to trust again. Years later, visitors often smiled while watching Celeste and Graham, now confident teenagers, welcoming new families arriving at the center with uncertain expressions. They never claimed healing was easy. They simply proved it was possible. Before we reach the end of this journey, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether someone has ever helped you carry a burden you thought would remain with you forever, or whether you have been that person for someone else. Your story could become the encouragement another member of our community needs today. As another peaceful afternoon filled the garden surrounding the Resilience Center with children's laughter, Victoria understood that true wealth had never been measured by company value or business awards. It was measured by the people willing to stand beside one another after life had fallen apart. Nolan realized that the greatest mission of his life had never taken place on a battlefield but in helping grieving families rediscover hope one ordinary day at a time. Celeste carried her father's kindness forward without losing the memory of him, and Graham grew into a young man who understood that strength is always at its greatest when guided by compassion. Gregory's legacy did not live inside monuments or headlines. It lived inside every family that crossed the little wooden bridge believing tomorrow could be brighter than yesterday. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that the strongest bridges are not built from steel or stone, but from kindness, forgiveness, hope, and the courage to help another heart find its way home.